Tonight, a new team in charge and a new provocation from Russia. Today, Prime Minister Andy Burnham met his cabinet for the first time. That's after this Russian warship carried out a drill with live ammunition off the coast of Plymouth.
It's not the first time that Russia has behaved like this, and frankly, it's the tip of the iceberg of the daily threats that this country faces.
The first challenge for Defence Secretary Wes Streeting. Add to that the conflicts in Gaza, Ukraine and Iran. So will new leadership mean a change in the way we handle an unpredictable US president? We'll focus on all that tonight. And after 500 migrants went missing on boats off the Myanmar coast, we hear from the family of one of those on board. Plus, will violent protests in Italy continue for a third night? We'll have more details about the death in police custody that sparked the unrest. Coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. There's a new boss in town. It was Andy Burnham's first day today. He met his top team, including the two men who will determine the UK's foreign policy and our ability to defend ourselves. Here they are, Foreign Secretary Ed Miliband and Defence Secretary Wes Streeting. Like the Prime Minister, they're both untested in their roles and on the world stage.
Who's your first call? Is it to President Trump? Is it to President Zelensky? Is it to someone else?
Those will be my first calls, and I'll be making very clear later today to President Zelensky that, there is no change.
Andy Burnham made his priorities clear as he entered Downing Street, and his Foreign Secretary is already on the way to a summit in the Philippines, where he'll meet the US Secretary of State. We're getting murmurs tonight that his appointment hasn't gone down well in the White House, especially given his views on net zero and on the president himself. More on that coming up, but we begin with the Russian ship, which has been lurking off the UK's coast and which carried out a live-fire military drill just hours before the new Prime Minister walked into Downing Street. Here's our Security and Defence Editor, Deborah Haynes.
Russian naval power nearing UK waters. Sky News filmed this warship in the North Sea as it received supplies from a second vessel. Days later, the same frigate conduct a live fire exercise some 40 nautical miles off the coast of Plymouth. It happened a couple of hours before Andy Burnham was sworn in as Prime Minister. Coincidence? Few think so.
We should see yesterday's events as performative and irresponsible. It's not the first time that Russia has behaved like this, and frankly, it's the tip of the iceberg of the daily threats that this country faces and our allies face.
An immediate test then for Britain's new Defence Secretary. Wes Streeting may be a novice in the role, but his department for once has the backing of a Chancellor who understands the threat and the urgent need to rearm. And that matters.
I'm absolutely delighted that my friend and predecessor, John Healey, has taken on the challenge of Chancellor of the Exchequer. His position on defence investment is on the record, as is mine.
This can surely only mean one thing. Many billions of pounds more must be found for the military, as Healey has previously called for defence spending to rise to 3% of GDP by 2030. The mood inside Defence about Wes Streeting being the new boss is actually pretty optimistic. Yes, he's got no background in military matters, but people I've spoken to point to the fact that he is smart, he's got experience of running a complex department in health, he's a risk taker, he's willing to speak his mind. These are all crucial skills for the new Defence Secretary as he turns his hand to converting what looks set to be an even bigger, faster increase in defence spending in the coming years into hard, credible military power. This former naval officer says the Russian warship and its timely test firing underlines why defence must be a priority for the new government.
The Prime Minister needs to take away from this that this threat, such as it is getting closer and closer to the UK mainland. This is a manifestation of the Russian squeeze.
But a Kremlin spokesman tried to downplay the incident.
all exercises and actions of our warships are carried out in strict accordance with international maritime law. Therefore, there is no need to see any hints here.
Unlikely the Defence Secretary will see it that way. Key, though, will be whether this is the moment the UK really does shift to a war footing. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Let's focus now on what we know about the new Foreign Secretary. Accepting his role, Ed Miliband said he would stand with Ukraine against Russia's illegal invasion, that he'd look to end the conflict in Iran and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He also pledged to seek a sustainable peace in Palestine and Israel. But over the years, he's had very strong opinions about the US president as well. Just have a look.
The idea that we have shared values with a racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper beggars belief.
When I lost the election, and I sort of, these things are seared on your memory, I rang up David Cameron to congratulate him, and I accepted the result. And that's what Donald Trump should be doing.
Some of the new Foreign Secretary's comments there about President Trump. Let's go straight to our David Blevins, who joins us from Washington. David, Ed Miliband not holding back some of his views in the past about Donald Trump there. How has this appointment gone down in the White House?
Well, I think the appointments in general have gone down with some cautious interest rather than any great fanfare. Even the appointment of Andy Burnham as Prime Minister himself, he had been critical of Donald Trump in the past during the recent by-election campaign. He described US politics as polarised and poisonous. But there's no doubt that it is the appointment of Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary that is causing the White House most concern, not just because of some of his words in the past, we've just heard them, but because of his actions. He led the opposition to the United States using UK bases for strikes on Iran, for example, the issue that effectively ended the relationship between Trump and Starmer. And when he was Energy Secretary, he blocked licences for drilling in the North Sea, and we know that's one of Donald Trump's pet projects. They're said to be so concerned about it in the White House, Yalda, that Steve Bannon, a former chief strategist for Donald Trump, told The Telegraph that the White House had taken the highly unusual step of warning the United Kingdom that appointing Ed Miliband to the cabinet could be what he called injurious to the special relationship between the UK and the US.
Yeah, David, there's no doubt that doing diplomacy with this particular administration is going to be tricky for this new cabinet as well.
Well, diplomacy requires you to have an understanding of the person you're doing business with. And under Trump, I think we've learned that personal chemistry and the ability to present what you want as a big win for the United States can be more valuable than what we might describe as traditional or institutional diplomacy. Keir Starmer showed us just how difficult it can be. He gave Donald Trump everything he wanted, a historic second state visit to the UK, a trade deal, and yet he still lost him on the issue of the war in Iran. Now, Andy Burnham has already had some experience of that transactional approach by Donald Trump. On Sunday, he appeared to try and bounce Burnham into opening up the North Sea for drilling for oil and gas by posting that the decision had already been made. But the first phone call between them yesterday, within an hour of Burnham going through the door at number 10, was polite and was pragmatic. It's now he must get down to the serious business of protecting Britain's national interest while maintaining that age-old alliance between the US and the UK. And that is a very fine balance for any Prime Minister to strike.
David, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Well, we've got some breaking news that's just come in the past few minutes. The Ukrainian president has sacked his country's most senior military commander, Alexander Syrsky, after thousands of people joined mass demonstrations Volodymyr Zelensky said his army would continue deep strikes into Russia under the new commander. So some breaking news there. The Ukrainian president sacked his country's most senior military commander after thousands of people joined mass demonstrations against him. Well, the Prime Minister has spoken a lot about his work on a project called Unbroken Cities, which helps Ukrainian communities affected by the war. He worked alongside the mayor of Lviv, Andriy Sadovsky, who spoke to me earlier. Just have a listen.
I think we will increase collaboration between Ukraine and Great Britain, and I think we will have good collaboration between Great Britain cities and Ukrainian cities. We must build a lot of new bridges between cities, companies, communities, but Russia, it is source of threat not only for Ukraine and also for Great Britain and for all democratic countries.
Yes, one of the things that President Zelensky mentioned was this anti-ballistic coalition. How does that coalition help cities like Lviv?
Every day, Russia launch drone, rockets, and destroy critical infrastructure and school, hospital in Ukraine. And more deeply collaboration with Great Britain in military sphere, it is very important step for our security and very important step for Great Britain. But today, Ukraine has experience about military drone, and we already share our experience. And opposite, we need new technology about missiles, about ballistic rockets, about protect our sky. But situation very tough. You see every day Russia launch a lot of new drones, a lot of new rockets, and destroy Ukrainian cities. Today, we have technology about drone, and also we have technology about anti-drone system. But Russian potential very large. Ukrainian potential also not small, but together with Great Britain, together with Germany, with French, we increase our potential. And today we protect Ukrainian cities, and maybe tomorrow our technology will protect cities in Europe, in Great Britain also.
That's the mayor of Lviv, who'd spent some time with Andy Burnham when he was mayor of Greater Manchester. Let's focus some more on that conflict in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. I've been chatting to our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, in Kyiv, and Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons in Jerusalem. I began with Stuart, asking about Andy Burnham's steadfast support for President Zelensky.
So the two men have spoken, unconditional support from the new Prime Minister. The President has thanked him very much, but this war goes on. The close quarter fighting in the east is continuous, as one expects. But the battle space has changed a bit because Ukraine has developed these long-range drones. Now, they're attacking cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow, but supply lines, all refineries, and that's causing a fair amount of chaos in Russia. And the hope from this new tactic was to try to get President Putin to realise perhaps that the game was up and that he needed to think about ceasefire talks. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case at all at the moment. In fact, he seems to be doubling down, particularly attacking cities like Kyiv. We had 40 ballistic missiles in an hour or so the other day, so there's very little defence against those types of missiles. And President Putin seems to be making it clear that he's going to continue this fighting more than ever. So, good commitment, good chat between the two leaders, but this war is going on, and there's nothing to indicate that's going to slow down at all as it stands.
Yeah, and we'll discuss that more in a moment, Stuart, but I'll just go to Adam. And Adam, of course, the new Prime Minister, even before he took up this role, made it clear that he believed Labour had got it wrong on Gaza.
Yeah, he said that that Labour should have gone harder in calling for a ceasefire in Gaza earlier on. Of course, the sort of political difficulties around that bedeviled Keir Starmer at what point after October 7th did he think it was prudent to try to rein in Israel. Andy Burnham clearly thinks that he took far too long, and I suspect there are plenty who will accept that. But it is an awkward position that Andy Burnham finds himself in terms of relations between the UK and Israel. The fact that the government recognised the state of Palestine, of course, went down very badly with Israeli politicians. But Andy Burnham's got a long run in maintaining relations. I'm told he came out here on official visits more than 20 years ago. James Purnell, his new chief of staff, has been out here plenty of times as well. If he wants a more muscular policy, I don't think it is going to be, for instance, describing what's happened in Gaza as genocide. I'd be very surprised if he did that. I think he will be much more critical, perhaps, of the settler movement out in the West Bank. The Netherlands has just introduced sanctions against businesses based in what most of the world considers to be illegal settlements there. I wonder if that is something that Andy Burnham might just consider.
Yeah, Adam, I think it's important to also emphasise that, you know, we talk about the ceasefire in Gaza, but of course the attacks by Israel on Gaza hasn't stopped. And of course we know that there is still not enough aid going in.
Yeah, the attacks are pretty much daily by Israeli forces in Gaza. Now, they say, for instance, that over the past couple of days they have killed what they describe as terrorists, but just today there are also reports of civilians being killed in an airstrike. One report saying that a family of 6 was killed there. The health ministry in Gaza says that the number of people killed since this quote-unquote ceasefire back in October has now reached about 1,150. By any standards, that doesn't feel like a ceasefire. And also that original plan really split Gaza in two, and the half that was occupied by Israel has slowly moved further and further. It's hard to put a figure on it, but probably about 2/3 of Gaza is now occupied by the Israeli military, which means that more than 2 million Gazans are being squeezed into around 1/3 of the Gaza Strip. That, of course, has heightened so many humanitarian problems and political problems that will come onto the in-tray, not just of Andy Burnham, but, of course, of Ed Miliband. And both of these men have endorsed a two-state solution. Well, ask politicians here in Israel, and it would be incredibly hard to find any leading politician in Israel who thinks that a two-state solution is still a viable idea.
Yeah, and Stuart, just back to you. I mean, you talk there about the battlefield in Ukraine, containing the battlefield and the war to Ukraine. You know, it feels right now like it's expanding beyond Ukraine to Europe and the UK.
Yeah, when you see live firing exercises from the Russians, we know there's a continuous concern amongst NATO countries that President Putin and Russia will try to drive a wedge between NATO nations. The Baltic states feel very vulnerable, and that's a continuous concern. And of course, the Russians have come out, made it clear they take a very, very dim view of Andy Burnham's statement of complete support for Ukraine, which is going to be something that will, I think, we'll keep hearing in the coming weeks and months. I think the biggest problem for the Prime Minister is that this war looks like it's going to go on and could expand. That's going to become much more expensive, and he's going to have to find this position where he's going to have to convince the British people that putting more money into defence and more money into what's happening in Ukraine and taking on Russia is the right thing to do, and that can be difficult as we go forward into this Prime Minister's the new Prime Minister's term in office.
Stuart, Adam, thank you. Now, we focused on Ukraine and Gaza. Let's turn to the war in Iran, because the Secretary of Defense and the most senior military general were giving evidence to Congress today when this happened. Have a listen. Oh, there was some heckling there. We'll try and bring you that. Let's have a listen.
Moral aggression. We are against this witness will suspend.
Well, Pete Hegseth was interrupted 4 times by hecklers who could be heard shouting, "Stop bombing our children in Iran and Palestine. This is illegal." Let's go straight to our James Matthews, who joins me from Washington. And James, some heckling there, but obviously, bigger than that, this is about accountability. It's been 5 months since those school children were killed in Myanmar on the first day of this war.
That's right, Yalda. The questions that will not go away and that I think those 2 individuals cannot avoid, they are there appearing before senators in actually what is a relatively rare public appearance. Remember the days when they would give regular weekly news conferences? Well, we haven't seen that since May. They haven't been before senators since May. The reason they are there today is to ask for more cash for the military at large, but also to prosecute the Iran conflict. And we're talking about billions. There's no certainty this will get passed through, but it's a reflection of this ongoing conflict, a never-ending war, as it was framed by one of the senators on that committee. You touched on it, Myanmar, the school bombing in which more than 150 people were killed. Now, of course, as we know, Sky News has established that, or has been told by security insiders, that human error was behind that, and that Donald Trump's denials of responsibility are undermining transparency in terms of establishing publicly who was to blame. Now, this is ongoing, this Q&A with the senators. It may be that Myanmar comes up, but it was a question that we have asked of the US administration, the Trump administration, before. It's a question we will continue to ask, and it's a question I asked today of Pete Hegseth and the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. They're both well insulated from public questions, but they were walking in the corridor. I took the opportunity to ask the question, the correct question, even if the opportunity of getting any kind of answer was pretty limited. Yalda, let's have a watch. General Kane, are you hiding the truth about the Myanmar school bombing? CENTCOM tell us it was human error.
I won't put this more last, sir.
Secretary Hegseth, are you hiding the truth, sir, over the Myanmar school bombing? Are you hiding the truth?
And James, as you say, attempts to try and get some answers, and you're faced there with silence. And frankly, in the last 5 months, it's either been denials or silence, or we're looking into it, or there's an investigation and we'll let you know, but no real answers, especially for the families who are seeking justice.
That's right. Yeah, wholly unsatisfactory for them, Yalda, and people who support their cause. And they were there represented today. We saw them in the line waiting to get in with pictures of people who had perished in that Myanmar school bombing. And of course, we heard them articulate their feelings several times over the course of Pete Hegseth's opening remarks, in which he spoke about the urgency of new funding, an urgent need for the funding. And we're talking about, many billions of dollars. It will be a reflection of the mood, I think, on Capitol Hill vis-à-vis the prosecution of the Iran conflict, how tough a time they are given today, and where the so-called supplemental bill goes, a reflection of the mood and how Democrats and Republicans alike judge the situation as a whole, the prosecution of the conflict, and of course an elusive exit strategy. It certainly seems to be elusive at this stage. Democrats are a hard no on new money, and Republicans, well, they're split.
Thank you so much for all of your analysis there. Now let's take a closer look at the UK's changing foreign policies and how they could be viewed in Washington. Brett Burnham is a former White House Director of Global Engagement and US diplomat as well. Thank you very much, Brett, for joining us here on the programme. I'm just going to pick up on the war in Iran because that's what we've just been talking about. And of course, this was a point of frustration for the US President Donald Trump when he was dealing with Keir Starmer. But I guess, do they think it's going to be more of the same from the Andy Burnham cabinet and his premiership? Because it doesn't seem like their position is likely to shift or change very much when it comes to the Iran war.
No, I don't think Washington expects a different position coming out of London. What you may see, Yalda, are attempts to throw Trump a bone. And that's what I think we saw, for instance, with the oil exploration in the North Sea. And there may be some of these other, superficial shifts. And yet at the same time, Andy Burnham is coming in with the benefit of a year and a half of Trump in the presidency to learn from perhaps some of the mistakes that Keir Starmer and other leaders made. And so if I were advising Burnham, you would prepare that study to look at what were, the areas in which there were perhaps too much flattery. We need only look at the World Cup as one example of a world leader that undermines their influence in other fora in their attempt to ingratiate themselves to President Trump.
Yes, because initially Keir Starmer was praised for being able to manage Trump and that relationship, extending the invitation from the king, and sort of trying to figure out and navigate that relationship. And of course, we saw what happened then with Donald Trump lashing out because, Keir Starmer refused to engage in the Iran war in the way that he wanted him to. So I guess it's a question of, what lessons can Andy Burnham take away from this and also what lessons his new Foreign Secretary, Ed Miliband, can take away.
Well, look, Miliband has spent a considerable amount of time here in the United States, so he'll be familiar with American politics. He also obviously has the challenge of some of his past comments criticizing President Trump. But, that was as well the case with his predecessor, Foreign Secretary Lamy. So this is not an insurmountable obstacle. At the same time, Yalda, this is what diplomats have to do. They've got to find a way to build either that personal connection or to find common ground. And there's enough now charted territory in terms of where, Trump sees his priorities, not just in the Middle East, but in other parts of the world. And perhaps there are opportunities. But again, we've got to learn that, Trump sees international relations as a one-way street that goes through Washington directly to him. So Burnham's going to have his work cut out for him, figuring out how do I ensure that I don't fall into the same trap that Keir Starmer did.
Yeah, should we be reading anything into, Steve Bannon, who was once a Trump whisperer, certainly under the first administration. Now he's not part of the administration, not an advisor, just a podcaster. But he did say today to the Telegraph that, there were raised eyebrows and frankly, within the White House, they didn't really want to see an Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary. Should that be read into, or is this, part of the court of Donald Trump, where there's a lot of sort of gossip and leaks and, perhaps we shouldn't be looking too seriously into these sorts of things?
I wouldn't, at an operational level, see it as a serious impediment. Sure, you're going to have the likes of Laura Loomer and Steve Bannon trying to throw mud, trying to discredit, trying to gain some sort of advantage vis-a-vis London by trying to bring back some of those old comments. But at the end of the day, look, this administration is going to see what they can get from the Burman government. But then also, I think there is an opportunity here for Burnham to chart out his own territory and to leverage what has been an increasing resistance on the part of other European leaders, the likes of Canada. You need only ask Mark Carney his feelings on the Trump administration after getting slapped with 50% tariffs after coming down for the World Cup and having a good cheer with Trump in the skybox. So, at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the next British Prime Minister, next Foreign Secretary, to assemble together a structure, a strategy with other like-minded partners.
What do you think might be the point of friction between these two and now this sort of new cabinet that has come into place in Britain?
Well, look, Iran is certainly going to be a point of friction, and yet we saw efforts in the waning days of the Starmer administration on cooperating and opening the Strait of Hormuz. I think those kind of engagements would and should be productive. You've already heard from Andy Burnham that he's looking to spend more on defense. I would try to highlight some of those. But at the same time, there are no shortage of potential pitfalls, and those include we're heading into elections here in the U.S. first legislative, and then we quickly go into presidential elections. And there are all sorts of perilous points in that process where you'll have politicians trying to attack some of our allies, and the UK stands out amongst them as an easy target.
Brett Bruen, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Sure thing.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme, we investigate what Palestinians describe as a raid on a West Bank village with IDF protection.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Let's go to the occupied West Bank now, where residents of a Palestinian town say Israeli settlers entered their community under the protection of soldiers and police, leading to a confrontation which ended in the killing of 2 Palestinians by Israeli forces. The Israeli military says it went to the town of Deir Jarir to escort settlers who claimed their livestock had been stolen. The IDF has not responded to our request for a comment. Our team travelled to the scene to try to reconstruct what happened that night. And a warning that Adam Parsons' report shows at the moment a man was shot.
On the West Bank, grainy footage of a vivid, deadly night. Israeli settlers enter a village accompanied by police and soldiers.
Oh!
Shots ring out, a man is hit and he falls to the ground. By the end of the night, 2 people are dead. Another grim chapter written. We've come here to Deir Jarir to find out what actually happened. It's a hot, dusty place shrouded in shock and sadness. This man witnessed it all. He saw the settlers arrive and watched as they started taking sheep from this shed. Livestock owned by a local farmer. Those settlers were accompanied by police and military units. He says that is a common sight.
The settlers only come when the Israeli army and the police are already here. They never enter the village on their own. They usually come while we're asleep. See our land over there? We can no longer reach it. If you try, they'll shoot at you.
But this time the shooting was in the village. Protests turned to violence, turned to death. 2 men killed in the streets. They have been named as Ahmed Abu Moho, who was 26, and Ode Farakne, who was 53. What happened in this distant, dusty village is a snapshot of the settler violence that is endemic on the West Bank. And there's lots of evidence of the involvement of Israeli authorities. Just walking around here, we've discovered tear gas canisters. These are spent stun grenades, and so many of these bullet casings from the live rounds that were fired. The villagers here say this is all about using violence to intimidate. Since the start of this decade, around 1,400 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli armed forces in the West Bank. It's understood that nobody from either the military or the police has been indicted for any of those killings. We meet Omran. His house was struck by a series of bullets. He's patched up some of the holes, but the memory won't leave him.
This is terror. Look at these children. What have they done? Instead of playing, this is what they have to see. Why should they have to grow up living in fear?
The children have been collecting bullet casings. They are horribly accustomed to violence. 7 people have been killed in just this village by Israeli forces over the past 3 years. And for the youngest, the trauma is all too obvious. Mahmoud tells me, we were stuck in one place. We were so scared. We couldn't move or leave until 4 in the morning. We just had to stay there and wait. This is a farming community. The theft of sheep is not some trivial concern. Jad's cousin was one of the 2 men killed, and Jad feels powerless.
Life has become very difficult. People have stopped grazing their sheep and stopped going to their land. They simply can't. If settlers see you, they'll chase you and make your life miserable.
The settlement that looms in the distance is illegal under international law. But here, those rules do seem distant and pointless. What drives the people of this village is fear. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Deir Jarir on the West Bank.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, the pain of refugee families whose loved ones have vanished in their hundreds in seas off Myanmar. What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now? In recent weeks, 2 boats overloaded with more than 500 people are feared to have sank off Myanmar. The UN says most of those aboard were Rohingya refugees desperate to escape Myanmar's Rakhine state, where they're persecuted by both sides of a brutal conflict. More than 1 million Rohingyas have lived for years in sprawling camps around Cox's Bazar in neighbouring Bangladesh, making it the world's largest refugee settlement. From there, our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch reports.
There's nothing to wash away this family's pain. The tears, like the monsoon rains in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, keep falling. Lalu is shaking with grief, and her husband, Nur, looks haunted, hollowed. Their 15-year-old son, Jani Alam, is missing. He may be one of more than 500 people feared dead after 2 boats bound for Malaysia, packed with mostly Rohingya people, vanished off the coast of Myanmar. More and more people are risking it all at sea to escape poverty here in the world's largest refugee camp. But Lalu says her son was kidnapped. They paid smugglers a £1,600 ransom to send him home.
যে আর পুয়ারের লুগিতে হিন্দিলা করি আরো ঘটনা বাড়ি যার গই এন্দিলা করি বহুত ফোন এন্দিলা করে লইজার গই বহুত আছে দালালক করে এ সুর করে লইজার গই সামিলা লই যায় বড় তুলে দি ফেলের কিছু মরি যার গই এন্দিলা আরিয়া মামু
4 days ago, a smuggler sent this message to them. But he gave no proof of life.
There are more than 1 million people here in Cox's Bazar, with most displaced from their homeland around a decade ago. They have little access to education, employment, and support from aid agencies is rapidly declining too. It feels increasingly desperate, with more and more people risking it all to leave, and some being forced to. Rafiq never thought he'd see his family again. He is one of just 9 survivors after a boat carrying 280 people capsized in April.
তারপর লাশিন দাসো গো মানে ওদের গাল লই আরা যারা জীবিত ছিলাম বাসি তার গাম্মা দৌজিত গাই তো লাশিন গো টেলিতাম তারপরও ডলাইতে কি কইছিম তালার হুকুম কেনে রাতি বেন তো হারি গই অন্য হারি তিও রাত থাকতে যে আই পুরা দিন আসুরাদা ছিলাম লাতিও গো 2 লিটারে পানির বোতল হইলাম মিনে হালি বিবালে আমি কি বাসি পুরা রাইতাছি
Do you still struggle with memories of what happened?
এরে দিন মানে দেখি ওন গুম গেলে মনোর স্বপ্ন মাঝে ইয়া করি মানে স্বপ্ন পরে তাই কল্পনা করি নেডিলে ইয়ার পর লাতিয়া বই করে মানে ডরাই যাব গুয়াতিকা
Teknaf is where Rafiq started his perilous journey. This boat, once packed with refugees, is one of few caught by the Coast Guard before it could go any further. Smugglers rarely talk, but this one has agreed to. Why? Guilt. He sent 20 people on the same boat as Rafiq. They all died.
Mani onrobhabe gya mane dilor shorulor pituttun. Ogga mani kiyaye jala jottorani aye argom no lage bala no lage. Hitarar mrittu ede hianollai boli etor hamkeni gori felailam endilla goriere ar fuzzi mori jaitoi boli aji ai can goitam arekjon can goribo can gori thaki parer iana ete attun manot.
You must have known the risks that you were placing these people in. These were women and children. Why did you keep doing it for so many years?
Mane itara tia jala mane ai tia jala guji itara jamara totmare ba faindona totmare jaibu huye ianollai boli gusilam ai gujilam ai ia to ar haz ai sari felai.
It is hard to believe that more than 500 people are currently missing at sea, and yet there's no search teams trying to find them. Seemingly invisible people, some tricked by traffickers, some tortured, so many simply in search of a better life. Odile Lench, Sky News, Bangladesh.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up, the violence erupting in Italy after the death of a man during an arrest by police.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from the UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr Walker, you're anti-abortion, but two women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the president? What did you say?
We had a great meeting with him. He's a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents based in Washington, D.C. David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism? I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division. Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr Navarro, can
I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I? I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance, sir, cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment?
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Ooh, okay, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening question is why it hasn't been stopped.
The Prime Minister of Italy has condemned protesters in the northern city of Bologna after dozens of police officers were injured. Thousands of people took to the streets last night after a man died whilst being restrained. Here's our international correspondent Alex Rossi.
The anger on the streets of Bologna is intense. Protesters clashing with police in the central piazza. These violent demonstrations were sparked by the death of a man who was being restrained by police. The images of that incident are disturbing. This video was filmed by a local resident and shows Moroccan-born Abderrahim Fakir's final moments. The 42-year-old man was restrained after claims he was being aggressive. He's face down and clearly in distress as officers straddle him. He calls out for help and several punches are thrown. He can then be seen lying motionless as paramedics watch on. His family claim he was killed in cold blood, and comparisons are being made to the killing of George Floyd by a police officer in Minneapolis in 2020. They are demanding justice.
He was handcuffed at the hands and feet, with his legs here, around his neck, and they sprayed him with pepper spray right in his mouth. Believe me, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. He was the only brother I had, and they took him away from me. It is not a dignified death.
Opposition politicians are now calling for accountability. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni issued this statement on social media. Regarding the death of Abderrahim Fakir, it is imperative that any potential responsibilities are thoroughly investigated with the utmost rigour. The truth must be pursued to the very end, without prejudice and without leniency for anyone. But nothing can justify violence against law enforcement. The police officers are being investigated and body cam footage will be released. But the atmosphere remains highly charged, with many demonstrators already convinced excessive force was used.
The ice. I knew it was in the United States, but I did not know it was in Italy as well.
We believe that what happened was a genuine murder, with the police sitting on top of Fakir and holding him down.
The key question now is whether the promise of a transparent investigation will be enough to stop these protests from spreading across Italy and becoming a national issue. Alex Rossi, Sky News.
Let's just show you some more of those images coming in from the northern city of Bologna. As you can see there, the protests gathered, as well as the police officers pushing the protesters back there. But there has been a lot of anger in Bologna there, and the police trying to restrain the demonstrators. But you can see, right, police out on the streets there in force. Obviously, as we saw there in Alex's report, the death of a Moroccan man, a 42-year-old Moroccan man in police custody, sparked these protests. We'll be monitoring those protests in Italy this week, but that's all from me and the team tonight. We'll be back at 9 p.m. tomorrow. The Wrap with Barbara Serra is up next. Goodbye.